You're listening to Symposium, a year-round conference in the arts, brought to you by Pipeline Artists.
All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome. We're going to let people trickle in just a little bit. You are in Symposium's town hall event, a special event tonight with Joshua Pruett and our host, Ronnie Brown, who's going to be actually our main kind of like questionnaire tonight. It's on TV animation, or at least in the animation space, and it's going to be on topics, everything, you know, regarding animation and everything we did not know about animation, which I'm very excited about tonight to hear all about. And just a really quick housekeeping on this front before I read off the bios, but we have a chat box over on the side that you guys can see. I believe, Jeannie, you might have to enable it for everybody potentially. But our Jeannie Barman is going to be over in the chat, and she's going to be kind of helping with conversation over there. If you have any particular Q&As for Joshua and Ronnie, please drop them in our Q&A right there in the box. We can answer kind of questions as we go throughout, or maybe at the end. But this is about an hour-long session on all things animation, and I'm really excited about it. So I'm going to read off right here. So who we have in our panel, you've seen her before. She's one of our pipeline people here. This is Miss Ronnie Brown, and over the span of 14 years, Ronnie has worked on a plethora of network productions for ABC, Adult Swim, TLC, NBC, Hulu, and Netflix. She's even served as a writing staff for Black Dynamite, the animated series on Adult Swim, and for Discovery Kids. She also worked on Daniel Spellbound for Netflix, Math Party for Netflix, Jim Henson Studios, and more. And with her versatile production and writing experience, Ronnie is looking forward to continuing writing and producing for live action and animated projects. So that is our host, Ronnie Brown, who's going to be throwing a bunch of questions at our guest tonight, Mr. Joshua Pruett, who is the only human being on Earth to have written for both Mystery Science Theater 3000 and Doctor Who. Isn't that kind of crazy? I love that.
It'll be on my tombstone.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I love that opener line, actually. It's like the only human on Earth. I think that's pretty cool. I like that a lot. But please read all of his many, many accolades. He's an Emmy Award-winning writer in the animation space, and he has some great shows that are coming out, and I would love for you guys to check it out. Some of his notable works out there were Last Kids on Earth. We also mentioned Doctor Who and Mystery Science, and is it PHINEAS and FERB, the movie, right? Candace Against the Universe, which was really cool. So he has a huge array of knowledge in the animation space. And I think Ronnie is here just to kind of pick his brain, which is going to be wonderful. So I'm going to personally slide off camera and let you guys take over the hour.
Thank you, Ruth.
All right. Thank you, Joshua, so much.
So everybody, basically, I told Joshua that I am going to approach this as if I'm sitting down having coffee and picking the brain of a potential mentor, because his work, his body of work and what he's done is extremely impressive. And I feel like he has a wealth of knowledge that, if you're new, trying to break into animation, just fresh, or if you're going from live action to animation and you've got, some general questions about the medium itself, that those questions would be able to be answered possibly tonight. And so
happy to help.
Thank you. So I think like one of the main things that happened to me when I got out of school, believe it or not, I went to school for animation.
Me too.
Yeah, when I think about it, I'm like, that was a crazy thing to do, but it was a cool experience. When you get out of school, or let's say you don't go to school at all, the question is, how do you get onto one of these animated projects? Mm-hmm. How do you get into a studio project? How do you get onto, an independent project? How do you break into animation, which is kind of like the general, how do you break into film? But I feel like for animation, there's an extra layer of breaking in that actually might have to happen.
Yeah, for sure. And it's one of those timeless questions, right, Ronnie? It's like, everyone's trying to find their path. And I think the truth of it, what you and I have found is that you make your path, right? You kind of invent it. So in my case, I started as a storyboard artist. And then after 5-6 years, started segueing over to writing. So I think one of the things I would say is, look at your skill set. What can you bring to a show? Okay, so we all have our dream gig. If your dream gig is being a writer, do you have any other skills that a team, a show could use? Some of you might be artists, some of you maybe aren't. If you are an artist and have an interest in storyboarding or have an interest in layout or character design, so the way it works is that, there's a limited amount of writers on any given show. Mm-hmm. And we have fewer writers in animation per show than we have in live action usually. So that's, sometimes a mark against us. Yeah. But I would say that, initially when you're trying to get your foot in the door and you're trying to get started, what can you offer that show so that you get in there and you learn what it takes to get these made and you start making connections and you meet people, all of those things, right? When we talk about networking. But I think the first thing I would, look at your skill set. And, if you're not necessarily an artist, maybe you go the production route, right? I started as an intern, then worked into a PA position and then a coordinator position. So I was working in production for almost 2 years before, making that leap into storyboarding. And so, initially that might be your way in. But the beauty part about that is that it's an opportunity for people to see your hustle, right? Yeah. Not necessarily your ambition for your dream job, but they want to see how hard worker you are. And so sometimes those are opportunities for you to establish yourself as someone who's, badass. And so I think that's the first question I would ask yourself is, if you're just trying to get in, you're trying to get that entry level position, you're trying to bulk up that resume, what can you add? How can you help? As opposed to looking at it like, how do I lock in my dream position? But how can you help? What can you offer?
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you mentioned breaking in different ways, because that was my trajectory. After I got out of school, believe it or not, I went down to Miami and I was just kind of like floating. I had no idea what to do next with my animation degree.
Right.
So I start interning on a reality show called Miami Inc. on TLC. Cool. And I got into casting, and that casting segued into me doing the same show in LA. And then as I'm out there, my roommate is working for South Park Studios. And so she got me in onto a gig. And so it was just like, it was one of those things where the luck met preparation at that point.
Absolutely.
But I was working in another area, and she helped me to get my first production gig. Mm-hmm. And from there, like I've coordinated, I've production managed, like I've done the production side and been able to segue into the writing side.
That's great. And can I build on that, Ronnie? I just want to add to that, because I think that's a great, because our stories are similar, right? But there's differences. But I think one of the things that's so key in your story that you just shared that I want to make sure everyone's kind of hearing is like, there is this impression, a lot of pressure we put ourselves when we're coming up, that we've got to network, we've got to meet people. And I think the key thing is like, no, you're networking with your friend group. Mm-hmm. Like, Jim Cameron, the director, came in at DreamWorks when I was there, and he shared with everybody at this lunchtime thing like this, actually. And someone asked him about networking. And one of the things he shared was like, look, if we're on a movie set, if you're on my set and you keep trying to, buy me lunch, right? It's not going to really get you what you want. Mm-hmm. He's like, the reality is, you're going to have friends coming up with you, right? So it's not really about networking. It's relationships, right? Your roommate, like your roommate. Actual friends, right? Yeah. Like I think what happens is we come in with that false assumption. And so we kind of put all this pressure on ourselves to like make all these professional connections. When the reality is, no, when you're in your group of hustlers, the people that you are friends with who are ambitious like you are, people will start to establish themselves. And when they hear about opportunities, they make phone calls. And I just want to reiterate, that's a differently shaped path than what sometimes we're being sold. And
Right.
I think it's closer to the reality. The reality is, no, we're all coming up together, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. You don't have to go out and seek, the top level showrunners in order to try to start your career. Who's
Correct.
around?
Who's around you? Yeah. And then it's really relationship based instead of like,
100%.
how do we help each other? It's like, no, we have these things in common and we're friends,
Exactly. I was just telling them before we all got on that I'm navigating the preschool space right now.
Yeah.
And it's a tight-knit group of people that look out for one another and get each other jobs and stuff like that. So it's like when you make those genuine friends and those connections, it gets work.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to recommend somebody who you admire and respect. Part of this journey, I think, is, as people come up and gain experience, you want to help your friends. But the beauty part is when, as you cultivate a group of people who are hard workers, that's when it's easy to make that recommendation. If you're making a recommendation to a boss, that's your reputation, right?
Absolutely.
So you want to make sure that that's a clean get,
Absolutely. Another big thing that I noticed, people either ask or they wonder, is there a difference between, and because you've done both, like, is there a difference between a live action script and an animation script when it comes to like the technical side of things and like how you approach the writing?
It's a great question. And this has come up a lot, especially in the last couple of years. I haven't done a lot in the live action space. I have a lot of dear friends who have, and I've talked to them, and I've written live action material for spec, like we all do. But it's really not different at all. The when we're even talking about page count, so if you're looking at a half hour of Last Kids on Earth, or a half hour comedy, it's like, it's structured all the same. The page count is almost identical. If it's a comedy half hour, the spacing might be a little bit different, but large live action, but largely it's the same, and the technical demands are the same. What's a little bit different in the animation space is that you want to be a little more visually oriented in what you are actually writing. So having some sense that someone's going to need to go and draw this and not capture it on set or, out in the real world, thinking visually becomes a really important part of working in animation. But as far as the half hour size, they're almost identical. When you're talking about an 11-minute series like Phineas and Ferb or Hamster and Gretel, like I'm on right now, it's like sometimes that page counts like, 15, 18 pages, 17 pages, but it's half of a half hour show, right? Yeah. Because that's how it ends up being blocked out. So, in my limited experience, it's like, it's almost identical. You're just talking about running time and you're talking about the needs of that show. Yeah.
I would say the thing that you pointed out was, thinking visually, and even when you're thinking visually, it's also thinking about the production process.
Yes.
And so, you might have a character and you want them to go through 10 costume changes, and then your line producer is like, well, that's right. That's not in the budget for that. You need to calm that down. It's easier to do that in live action than animation. But I think, there are a lot of similarities when it comes to writing, the way the room is ran.
That's right.
You're just, writing an elevated, imaginative space.
That's right. And I think I love that you brought that up, Ronnie, because I think that there's something, and people don't talk about this, is that sometimes it's like I'm working on a Disney series, but it's like we still need to be mindful of our budget. We need to be conscious of the demands we're putting on our storyboard team, our design team, our background team. Part of the collaborative interaction that we have is, hey, we want to make sure we're not putting too much pressure on our artistic collaborators, because we're all doing this together. So sometimes there's really healthy back and forth where we're like, oh, let's not be so ambitious in this sequence, right? Let's actually, how many action sequences do we need to tell this story effectively? how much of a demand is that going to put on our storyboard layout teams and eventually our animation houses who are going to actually animate those sequences? But I tell myself it's a little bit like low budget school of filmmaking, because if I can reuse a set like Roger Corman in the 60s making Edgar Allan Poe movies, my producer is going to be a lot happier with me, by the way, right?
Yep.
So it's like we've got standing sets, right? Somewhere in Van Nuys, California. And, even though it's animation, it's like, that means that saves time and money, and time is money in animation, right? And in production. So sometimes it means writing with that in mind. But I think the cool part, and this would be in live action as well, but it's like, having that little sandbox, having those walls for you to work inside of, that can be really creatively inspiring. The thing I try to share with folks, and I do some teaching myself, is, the sandbox, right, that we consider, right? Those restraints or constraints, the sandbox can also go up and down, how deep in the sandbox you go or how high above the sandbox. And you're trying to look at your sandbox in a unique or special way. So working within those restraints, I think sometimes can make you more creative as a writer. Absolutely.
One thing that I've had come to me as a question, and something I've noticed about myself, because I have the left and the right brain going on. Like I do draw. I went for animation. I was going to be an animator. That was my original goal as a kid. And then I discovered I don't like animating.
Yes.
So I had to figure out another path. Do you find that being a board artist and having those artistic abilities have helped you in your path through the animation, writing process?
And great question. What's really interesting about it is initially it was a little bit of an obstacle, because people, they want to put you in a box.
Yeah.
And so, one of the challenges that I, was faced with was breaking people's preconceived notions about what I could do or not do. And, one of the things I think that's important about early on in your career, it's actually helpful to pigeonhole yourself first. Because what you are trying to do is make yourself attractive to a line producer who's trying to fill a need, and that need is trying to fill a schedule. So one of the first things you want to do is not be confusing to somebody else. But that's only initially, because part of all you're trying to do is get in the door and establish yourself. And once you've done that, then you do the work of what's my long-term plan. So initially for me, getting in the door, it was storyboarding. That's really what I wanted to be doing. And so that was a journey, right? To get in the door. How do I make that happen? How do I get my first couple jobs? But then once I realized that, I thought writing was more of my superpower, one of the challenges I faced at DreamWorks initially was they didn't want to give me the storyboard test because I was already working in production. And they said that they actively discouraged people from making the transition from the production ladder to the artistic one. And I was super confused because I thought that's how we did it, Ronnie. Like I thought you get in the door, you get your hands dirty, you understand how the sausage is made, and you're able to leverage that, right? And add that to your experience, to your resume. And so I waited for those people to get fired. They did. I waited a year. I asked again. At this point, I was on a B movie as a coordinator. And I asked if I could take the story test, and they said yes. They said, because, Josh, you know how this is done. If you're a halfway decent story artist, this is simpler for everybody. It's a win across the board. And I was like, well, that's what I thought. Yeah. So I did my story test, and I ended up being the first internal production candidate in the history of the company to actually make the transition from production ladder to the artistic ladder.
Wow.
But then the same thing happened to me later when I was trying to write. I ended up co-writing a short with the character Bob from Monsters vs. Aliens, and they didn't want to give me credit. And it happened kind of again and again. And it wasn't until there was a Dragon special I ended up co-writing after they told me I wouldn't get credit. But I got my first writing credit on that. And then ended up in a position where I had applied for a job on Phineas and Ferb and a job on Lego Movie. The money was the same. I got both job offers the same week, but I ended up accepting Phineas and Ferb because for the first time I would get writing credit for the work I was doing.
Wow.
And that totally changed the course of my career. Because I just, that's where I wanted to go. That's where I thought my superpower was. But, I think it's important to have some mindfulness of what you're trying to do initially to get on that ladder, whatever that first ladder is. And then to have the resolve and the hustle to work in your spare time in order to make that jump to the other side. But I will say that I had a support from a lot of really wonderful people because I had taken my time and not let my ambition kind of cloud my hard work. I think, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I love that. And I love that you mentioned the supportive people, because I feel like that's an important aspect of all of this. Your work friends, the people who actually believe in you. When I was production coordinating at Cartoon Network, I noticed that like most of the shows that were being pitched and greenlit were being done by board artists.
Yes.
And I'm like, well, I'm not a board artist. And it was a board show, and they didn't even get scripts. And that was my first time even seeing that. I was like, whoa, you're making a show without a script. What's going on? But it took the showrunner of the show that I was on to look at me and say, you know what, I'm going to bring you on as the assistant in the next season for in the room, because without that, it might have been very difficult,
absolutely.
Not drawing to get into that position.
Well, and absolutely, Ronnie, my assumption is, because you're is that you've established yourself in that environment as somebody that they could count on.
Right.
And if you had been very focused on, I got to get that thing, I want to be a showrunner, I want to do this, these days, and I got to be honest, I'm not sure, there's some 36 folks in here. Everyone's coming from a different place, but I want to be straight with everybody and just say out loud that, I've run into a lot of young people who are shooting for showrunner, and we all know that's the big dream. We get it. But it's so important that you establish yourself as someone who can be counted on to do their job. Even if that low-level job is not your favorite thing, we get it. But I'm talking to a lot of young folks who've got stars in their eyes, who aren't willing to kind of do the work at the ground level. And, that is how this gets done. That is the grit. That is the grit. It's good that you've got a dream, but we've got to apply that grit first. And I'm not saying I'm not somebody who is like, be abused and be taken advantage of, because I was, right? It's not about that. It's not about that. It's that I've been very blessed by the relationships that I've built over the years. And it's based on, because you do the work. You do the work first, because that's the help that those people need.
Right. Yeah, no, doing the work and establishing yourself as somebody who is reliable, that people want to call on is extremely, extremely important.
Yes.
So yeah, that
and
was
fun to be around, Ronnie, right? Like that, God forbid.
Yeah, they gotta want to have a beer with you. That's
yes.
They want to have a beer with you. Are you the person that has a nice presence?
That's
in
right.
The room? That's important.
That energy that we can give to others. Yeah. Like, people have probably heard this, but the don't be a dick philosophy, or the no a-hole philosophy. Like, there's shows where that's like literally written on the wall. This industry is too small. Yeah. Right? People know. People talk. People talk. And so if you're somebody who can be relied on, who's fun to be around at 10 o'clock at night, when you're doing notes after a giant brainstorm and got to repitch that to the studio tomorrow, they call you the next time.
Exactly. So with segueing off of that, because like, I feel like being in the room is kind of like not working. It feels like sometimes you're joking, you're laughing, you're telling stories, you're basically hanging with your buddies sometimes. That's been some of my experience.
Yeah.
What has it been like for you in different rooms? And if a newbie's coming in, what would you tell them to expect or to warn them about when it comes to being in an animation writer's room?
I think it's, listening first is big. I think one of the things, especially nowadays where we've got a lot of Zoom rooms, it's even more important to listen instead of waiting to talk. In that first job, everyone, or even second, third, sixth job, right? This is the fifth time I've worked with Dan on something. And in this new room that we've got an amazing team. But it took us months in this Zoom room full of professionals to figure out how to interface with the technology and still advocate for each other. To wait a beat, make sure that person was finished talking, to make room for each other. And in a face-to-face room, it's easier to do because, you can there's a vibe, right? So there's actually chemistry, right?
Yeah.
But I would say one of the things is, listen first and find your window with your idea, write it down if you have something to contribute, but find that window in the natural rhythm of the room and the conversation where you can contribute. And I will say it's harder digitally. It's absolutely harder in a Zoom. But I think the opportunity that's allowed us on our show is, to advocate for each other. So in other words, if you're seeing somebody who you can see is trying to talk and you've got a window, you maybe throw to them instead. And it's a new skill set that I feel like I'm learning. I haven't mastered it in any way, but it's something I've noticed about the growth of our team on HAMSTER is making room for each other, because this digital interface, there's benefits, but there's drawbacks as well. But I think if you're starting, most folks coming in who their first gig might be set up like this.
Yeah.
And so, that would be my advice.
Yeah, my question, and this is coming from me being in Georgia, having previously been in LA and thinking about what's next, because I feel like we might be post-COVID. I don't know at this point.
Hard to tell. Yeah.
Where do you think the future of these Zoom rooms are going to go? And I say that with saying, like, the particular show I'm on, the showrunner is just like, we could Zoom forever. Some people are ready to get back in person. So do you think that there's going to be like a hybrid space? Do you feel like it's going to go back to normal? What do you think is going to happen?
Great question. I feel like first and foremost, it'll be case by case, right? So there's definitely going to be situations where there's showrunners who, or even, head writers who want to be in person, full stop. But I get this impression from a lot of fellow creatives and my peers who are going, oh no, there's a quality of life that we can actually aspire to, where, I've talked to a bunch of folks who their room now keeps really regular and dependable hours, where they're doing 10 to 11:30 and then they're doing, 2 to 4. And so that people can see their families. I mean, the thing, in my heart and head, there's a part of me that goes, there's got to be some benefit to what we've all been through for the last 2 years. And my hope is that it's productions and producers who are mindful and aware and who are going, oh no, this is a viable option. This is possible to do. And it extends the talent pool in a really exciting way. So the kind of folks that we're allowed to get into the room who have opportunities for those jobs, and the people who don't necessarily live in Los Angeles or East or West Coast. And so, there's video game companies who've, thrown out in the last 6 months where they're like, you don't ever have to come back in because our productivity has never been higher. And we are still producing the kind of work that we need to as a company. So my hope is that, it'll be hybrid because it'll give us some flexibility. And then my dream would be for it to be, on a very personal basis, right? So we get we get everybody, people hang out, right? So even if the Zoom is, the majority, well, then you get everybody together and do a party every 3 months, and then it's just the social and the fun part.
That's exactly what's happening with the show that I'm on right now. I literally went to LA for my birthday, went to Disneyland with the crew.
Love it. Oh, it's so fantastic, Ronnie.
Yeah. And I'm loving the life, and like you said, like I'm hoping that it stays hybrid. You look at it case by case and see what works best for your room.
Yes, and for that team, you betcha. Yeah, we it's interesting. Like we have been in Zoom since November of 2020. So it's almost 2 full years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you're still making the show, so why not?
Still making the show, right? We're on Disney Plus right now. I mean, we did 30 half hours of this show.
Nice.
Yeah, it's wild.
I love it. So this is a more business related question.
Okay.
I think what a lot of people, especially newbies, are not aware of is the WGA and what union animation writers
the
are.
839,
Yeah. What is the difference between these two entities, and not necessarily how do you feel about it, or what has been your experience, and what are you hoping for the future happening between those two entities?
It's a very loaded question, Ronnie. It's a good one. It's a good one. Yeah. So for the room, for everybody here who maybe isn't aware, Writers Guild covers pretty much all live action television, union live action television and features. 839 covers, feature animation largely and television. One of the big discrepancies in this space is what's called prime time animation. So that's something like a Bob's Burgers or Family Guy or, Simpsons. So one of the things that is, I want to say, a frustrating reality of working in animation is that, we get paid roughly half or less than half or a third of what our live action brethren get paid. And as I say, when it's something like a half hour script, which is no different between formatting, technical demands, or even story demands,
the
work itself, right?
Yeah.
I don't stand to get residuals for the work I've done because of the how the animation union, the guidelines were built with the motion picture group, AMP, and we just don't get as much dough. So luckily, we've got insurance, and we've actually got some of the better insurance coverage, if I'm totally honest. But the future is a little murky, because the reality is, there's no difference between the skill sets, and if anything, some of the demands in animation are even more rigorous than live action just by their nature. And so sometimes it's apples and apples, sometimes it's apples and oranges. But I will say that, when it comes to, I have writer friends who've worked on Family Guy, and they'll still get residuals. And, I worked on a season and a half of Phineas and Ferb, and, it's one of the highest rated and biggest animated series in the last 15 years. But I don't see residuals for the work that I did on that series. So I think certainly it's good to educate yourself on, and there's plenty of folks who are in both unions. Certainly there's interest in trying to get WGA coverage for animation writers. But I think it's going to be a long road to get there, because essentially what we're talking about is convincing the animation studios to pay double what they pay now. Certainly, there are folks like where I started I was writing and boarding. And so on board driven shows account for some of the most successful series in the history of animation. You know, Phineas and Ferb was board driven, SpongeBob was board driven. It is now currently script driven. So things ebb and flow and change. But, you know, I would like to see a little more parity but between our compensation, I think. You know, I think working in animation is great. And, you know, I don't consider it, you know, second best, you know.
Yeah.
Like you, I loved cartoons. I love animation. I'm a huge live action guy too. You know, I love all that stuff. But, you know, I think working in a visual medium and working in a medium for all ages and all audiences is a really specific challenge and a huge opportunity. So the fact that I have to take a pay cut to do that kind of work, you know, is a real shame.
Yeah.
And certainly not commensurate with how we, you know, are able to affect our audiences, you know.
Yeah. Honestly, I think at the end of the day, it speaks to the passion that we have for it.
I agree.
With the knowledge that there's people out there being paid twice, sometimes more.
3 times,
yeah, what we're being paid.
Yeah.
So it says a lot. It says a lot. But I am hopeful for the future as well with that. But I feel like these are things that, you know, newbie writers need to understand and be aware of going into this.
100%.
And not just that, you know, you sit down and you write and you know, you get your creative side down. It's a business.
And there's a strategy, right?
Yeah.
Strategize for yourself, you know, think about where you see yourself in 5, 10, 20 years. Think about, you know, where you want to write in the animation space, you know. So for instance, Ronnie, so you have some more experience in pre-K than I do. And one of the interesting things that happens, I think, is that people, you know, pre-K will get a bad rap. But on the other hand, man, like a lot of folks I know in pre-K, their jobs last longer. They stay on teams for longer. And, you know, they've got pretty good job satisfaction. So I think it's really about where you want to position yourself, where you want to see yourself and, you know, what your plan is, you know, because, hey, getting paid to write, that is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, it's a sweet gig. You know,
it's a sweet gig.
It's cool. Okay, so here's a lighter, funner question because that, great. You know, if you could talk to your younger version of yourself, what advice would you give yourself when going into animation writing specifically?
It's a great question. Couple things. The first thing is I probably would have made some shorts. I probably would have tried to produce something.
Some animated?
Animated or live action. I probably would have grabbed some friends and I probably would have made stuff. I think I was very focused on my portfolio and doing some samples, which is good, always good. But I think I would have made some things.
Yeah.
Because I would say last 15 years or so, you know, and more depending on your point of view, longer, but like, you know, making things and showing it to people are really the thing. So, you know, shorts or, you know, maybe doing that comic or that graphic novel, you know, or self-publishing that book. I've done a little bit of it, but I think I probably would have done more because, you know, finished things are even better samples than sample scripts. Even if that finished thing is short.
Yeah.
Because it shows that you can, you know, bring something to completion.
I love that. Yeah, that's great advice to your young self for sure. Okay, so I do have a question that.
Oh wait, hold on, Ronnie. What would you tell yourself?
I've made shorts and stuff like that, and it's a lot of fun. So I think I would tell myself. I think I would honestly tell myself to relax a little bit more when it comes to that trajectory, because I reached a point in my life where I was production coordinating, and I actually was getting frustrated because I had no idea how to get out of the production side of things.
Yes.
It could be, it's a total enigma because it's not one of those things where it's like, well, this is exactly what you do.
That's right.
But while I was, working on the show, at one point, I think my longest day was 26 hours straight at the studio.
Been there.
Yes.
Been there.
Straight at the studio, taking retake notes and, communicating with the overseas studios in Korea and stuff like that. Like,
you bet.
Yeah, on the train ride back home to get a few hours of sleep to go back to the studio, I was thinking of what I'm going to write. Yeah. So I wrote for myself. I wrote for fun. I never stopped writing. Yeah. And when the opportunity came along, I was ready.
Yeah.
So I think I would just ease up on myself instead of getting frustrated and just know that, some things take time.
Yeah, I love that. That's a real good one. I feel like I was talking to somebody about this today. Like, no one cares how long it takes but you.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. It genuinely doesn't matter. And we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, I think. But I think if we can extend ourselves a little bit of grace inside of that, I think maybe we'll enjoy the journey a little bit more.
Yeah. Enjoy the journey. That is the key, because it is a journey. Yeah. I'm sure you look back at everything you've been through and all the projects you worked on, and you're just like, man, that was a heck of a ride. And there's more to come. Like, it doesn't stop.
and to not compare yourself to other people.
Absolutely.
Like, we all have looked out at our heroes, and we've seen their success and we've seen their trajectory, or we have close friends who seem to have a better road than our road, or it seems easier, and I guarantee you it's not. And I think, more to the point, you've got to compare yourself to your journey. Mm-hmm. Where were you 6 months ago? Where were you 5 years ago? And separate friend I was talking to today, I was like, if I compare myself to 8 years ago, Josh, I'm fine. That's fine. Cool. I'm a published author. I've got an Emmy Award. I'm doing okay. Yeah. I'm doing, I haven't show run yet. There's lots, I haven't published 10 books, but I've published 4 or 5. So, it's only compare yourself to yourself, because that's a slippery slope. We don't got time for that.
No, not at all.
We don't got time for it.
Not at all. We ain't got time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Don't.
So and I feel like just enjoying it, that's the most important part, because we make cartoons. It's supposed to be fun.
It's supposed to be fun. We bring joy to other people. Yeah, that's awesome. We're literally what kids do when they come home from school,
and they can't wait.
They watch what we do. That's a gift.
Yes,
that's a gift.
I love it. So out of that, like, that train ride, and I'm writing and, doing everything on my own when it comes to honing in on my craft.
Yes.
At the end of that journey, when I got that offer to, be my first writing assistant position, I looked at my body of work and it was all over the place.
Okay.
I write sci-fi, I write horror, I write cartoons, I write for old, for young, da-da-da-da-da. What advice do you have for someone who is putting their portfolio together? And you mentioned pigeonholing earlier. Yeah. And I actually pinned a comment that I made, a tweet about pigeonholing and how it has helped me in the past few years. I pigeonholed myself. I am a preschool animation writer. But like I said, I have horrors and thrillers and stuff like that. So obviously there's more.
You bet.
What portfolio advice would you give people?
And I kind of love what we're zeroing in on here, Ronnie, because I feel like, you write. I think the first things you should do is write what you want. Mm-hmm. Right? You write what you want, because then you're more likely to sit down. So that's number one. So then I think it's about pigeonholing yourself so that you can get that first gig. But I also think it's looking at, it's like, what do you do best? You know, I think I remember, you know, there's so many wonderful interviews out there with George Lucas, and it's like, you know, he wanted to make more arty stuff. You know, THX 1138 is like an abstracted sci-fi exercise, you know, and it was Coppola who actually said, you know, I want to see what you can do that's human. I want to see what you can do that's actually people. And he went and made American Graffiti. Nice. So it's like one of Lucas's superpowers is, you know, accessibility in fantasy.
Nice.
You know, so look at yourself and go, okay, there's things I want to do. I love horror movies, right? I love them, right? I've written horror short stories. I want to get into that space. So I'm diversifying a little bit, right, from my journey. But it wasn't necessarily a superpower right away, but I've been funny for a long time. So for me, it was like, okay, cool. Coming from DreamWorks Feature Animation, I want to have some funny samples. You know, if I'm going to be in this family space, that's worth my time to cultivate because it's easier for someone to get. Yeah. They'll look at my resume. So it doesn't mean don't write that horror spec. Write it because it brings you joy. Yeah. But if you're trying to get a comedy job, right, maybe do a comedy horror thing. Or if you're going to write 3 specs that year, and that would be a good average, at least 2, you know, if it's 3, 2 of those are comedy and 1's horror, 1's for you, right? Yes. It's like that adage of like, you know, you do 1 for them and 1 for you. Yeah. Right. So that way, when when there's an opportunity, right, Ronnie, like you said, when there's an opportunity and someone goes, oh, hey, I've got this thing. Do you have like a comedy? And you're like, yep, I got 2 of them. Yep. There it is.
Luck meets preparation.
That's it. Every time. And I think that, you know, writing the thing you want first, again, it's like, then you're going to sit down. If it feels too much like a homework assignment, like don't do it. If you're writing a procedural because that's what somebody said that the agents are looking for, whatever, it doesn't matter because even if you got that job, you're going to be miserable. Yeah, it'd be a writing job, but don't set yourself up for that. Exactly. Set yourself up for success.
Exactly. I absolutely love that. I love that. So I don't know how we're doing on time, Ruth, but it's like 10 minutes left. I see questions in the Q&A, like, should we shift over or what do you think?
Yeah, I think we just have a couple questions that we can tackle right here at the end. By the way, this conversation has just been phenomenal. Like people were gushing over in the chat room over there. And I know me and Matt and Jeannie on our Slack channel are just like, oh my God, this is amazing. You know, like we're over there like gushing about you guys in the background. So thank you so very much for just all the knowledge and all the insights so far that was shared. So, which has been amazing. And it's crazy enough. I wanted to mention, we had like over 120 signups for this thing. And so the recording is going to be going out following this event within about 48 hours, usually following. And so we have a lot of interest in the animation lineup. I know we have kind of a smaller crowd tonight, but we did have a big sign up list that we're excited to send the recording out. So
that's great.
Awesome. So, I just want to say, Joshua, I feel like you have confirmed like a lot of stuff that, I've been wondering about or I've been asked over the years. Like it's just confirmation. So I've enjoyed this thoroughly.
My pleasure. Love hanging out, Ronnie.
Awesome.
All right. Well, let's just go through these last bit of questions here in the last 5 minutes right here. And if it's directed at Joshua or Ronnie, I'll note that if it's there and or both of you guys can feed into the answer if you'd like to ping it back and forth, that's totally fine. So we have here from Christina, is it smarter to write an animated script so it's PG? Are there rules to how you write animation?
Okay, Ronnie, you want to take that one first?
Yeah, because I honestly, I think it depends on what you want to do or where the script is going. Because believe it or not, I had a gig at Nickelodeon last year, and to get the gig, I submitted an adult animated comedy, like a 15-minute page script for that. It was raunchy, it was all over the place, and it was about an office in hell. You know, nothing Nickelodeon related, but it showed my comedy voice.
Great.
And that was the compliment that I got from the folks that hired me for that. So
that's awesome.
I think that honestly you don't necessarily have to edit yourself or play to a certain rating or whatever. It depends on where your voice is, because at the end of the day, I'm not going to put that stuff into the script that they hire me to write. They just know that I have a funny voice, and that was what they liked about that particular script.
I think that's right on. I think that's what you need. Like, if it's a comedy show, they just want to know that you're going to be funny, right?
Yep.
The people, generally speaking, the people on the other side of that desk are also writers. So they're going to, they will know when they're reading it, and they want to see your point of view. They want to see who you are. They want to see that you can be funny on the page.
Yep.
And that's the thing. I read a sample the other day. It's like, there were pages that was singing on page 1. And I was like, you could shoot this tomorrow. Nice. That's the goal. Like, don't worry about whether, it's got curse words in it or not. I think it being, and maybe you have both, like we're saying, you've got something that might be on Adult Swim, and then you've got something that could live on Nickelodeon.
Yep.
I like that. The range can be there. So it's write essentially what comes naturally to you on that front. Don't try to filter yourself or filter your voice through any kind of expectation on that front.
And by the way, people are always looking for funny.
Yeah.
Right. And I will say this, like, if you are writing a preschool script, don't put curse words in it.
Well, there you go. There's your note.
Yeah, right. Don't. That's great. Yeah. Don't work at cross purposes with yourself.
Yeah. Understand the genre.
Yeah.
We're not teaching preschoolers foul language that early, at least. Hopefully not. So. Okay, so we have from David Sanders. I guess he's crossing into live action here. He says, any advice for how to write / format and animated sections as fantasies within a live action screenplay, kind of integrating two different styles right there?
No, it wouldn't be any different. You would just be clear in the stage direction that it's animated, and you might, like I said, you might be a little more deliberate about what's happening physically with the characters and the environment. As opposed to just focusing on dialogue.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so pretty simple on that. Do you need to put any kind of notations? Hey, this is switching into animation or anything like that? Whenever
in the stage direction.
Stage direction. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe like an asterisk. This sequence is animated.
Animated. Or maybe in the slug line, you could just say, animated sequence begins here. Maybe.
Right. Pretty simple. Okay. Perfect. All right, so from Dean, I think he has a 2-question here. As to question on writer compensation, I think you guys talked about that during the hour. What are the expected net profits versus costs for live action versus animated script or similar links? And I think he's talking probably about feature.
Like how we're compensated, you mean?
Yeah. How an animated writer would be compensated.
Yeah, it's just less.
It's just less.
Like you can actually look up Writers Guild. It's all public.
Yeah,
you can look up on the Writers Guild website. You can see the list of minimums. By the way, great way to educate yourself. Mm-hmm. And there's also a list of minimums on the Writers Guild website, so Animation Guild website.
Yeah, it's sobering whenever you take a look at that list, because they update it from year to year on what the bases are and what the minimums are and everything like that. So for those who are curious on that front, please take a look at that. Now, those are it's the minimums that they list, right, Joshua? It's not necessarily what your agent or manager or your agent would negotiate for you on that front.
But it's a good thing to give you. Like, I had a gig come up where I was able to use those minimums, so at least I knew what the ballpark was. Yeah. So I knew if I was getting lowballed. So again, that's the business side of this, like Ronnie mentioned. It's just educating yourself about the thing that you're trying to do.
Yep, it's important.
Yes, it is, definitely. Okay, so Dean also followed up with, if you eased up on yourself early in your career, do you think you would be as successful and knowledgeable as you are today? Is what you had to go through earlier just common necessary steps that very few are talented enough to skip?
I think that's directed towards me. Honestly, I try not to think about the what if factor, because I believe that I did exactly what I was supposed to do. But was that necessary steps? Were some of the things that I went through necessary steps? For me, they were. For you, there might be different steps. There might be different things that you're going to go through. So maybe your intensity might lead you down, a totally different path of success. For me, it really was I'm looking back at like, okay, go ahead and ease up, because I think that mindset is coming from more so, I do the work. I can't control what happens outside of that work. So I do the work, I submit myself, I put myself out there. I know I'm good. I get it on paper. I get notes from stuff like Script Pipeline that says I'm good. And other than that, what comes next, because I can't control where the industry actually takes me.
That's it.
I can control the work.
We can't will it to happen. Yeah. And I think, to build on Ronnie's observation, I feel like it's, there's a difference between the work and fretting and worrying about the work. Yeah. And I think as young people, we spend a lot of energy over here. And, if you did a page a day after you did your outline, or a half page, eventually you're going to get there. Yeah. C. Robert Cargill, who wrote Doctor Strange, the first one, and Black Phone and Sinister, he's a great person to follow on Twitter. Just really inspiring writer, really about the day-to-day of what it looks like to write, and how to stay disciplined without beating yourself up. But, I think there's a difference between staying up late to try to finish a script, or you do a page a day for a month, and you have a life, because the life that you live, informs what you write. We have 100%. Oh my gosh. We have to remember how to live too. And I'm guilty of that all the time, because my ambitions are great. But I have a family and people I care about, and that's, if we invest in our lives in addition to our ambition, our work gets better. Wow. We have more to offer.
Yep.
100%. That's really solid advice. I love that. Well, let's round things out here, specifically with a couple people asking about your if you had one gold nugget of advice that you wanted to give writers who are not associated with animation right now, but who want to get into it for one reason or the other, like they're in their 40s and trying to move on from a non-related background, or they've just been drawing and illustrating their whole lives and had a love for animation and want to move that direction. Why don't each of you give me your best advice of what this writer or person needs to do to start pursuing animation for the very first time? What's one piece right there?
I'll go first so that we can end on our guest of honor.
Yeah.
And my advice is to learn.
Oh, there you go.
Not even just learning about writing, but learn about, what animation is in general. Like, what is a pipeline? It is, what is the animation pipeline? What do the different artists do? Like having awareness and, I hate to say the word sympathy, but sympathy for the production side of things, yeah. I think definitely will make you a better writer when it comes to animation. Learn your craft, learn the business side of it, understand what it is that you're getting into.
That's great. I love that, Ronnie. I feel like two quick things. One is strategize. So strategize your career. What do you actually want? What do you want to do every day and get paid for? What does it look like? Think about it. Don't just chase a job title. Like I said, everyone's saying showrunner. Do you even know what that job is yet? Right. Do you know what that requires of you? Most of us don't. I've never done the job. I've seen it up close, and I know enough about it that I'm going to be really careful about pursuing that sort of ambition. So kind of building on what Ronnie said, it's like educate yourself. What are all the roles? What are all the things you could do to contribute? You may want to write an animation, but you might have just a passion for it and want to be a part of the team. You might actually have great producerial instincts, so educate yourself. But I think, think about where you want to be. Think about it. Don't just chase the big candy apple. Think about where you want to be. And then the other piece of that is kind of like what my old advice was, is, make things. That's how you know how hard something really is. Try and make a short. If you ever try to get 5 people to decide what they're going to have for dinner, it's hard to lead. Leadership is a completely different skill set. And so, if you want to get things made, if you want to make a multi-million-dollar film or TV series, it'd be good to have some experience with, leading the charge and bringing something to completion, finishing things, make stuff and show it to people. Make things.
Well, I think that's rounded out our hour pretty well right there, guys. So, Joshua, thank you so very much for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Ronnie. Really appreciated it. And thank you, Ronnie, for spearheading all the cues tonight and leading us down, a really awesome Q&A with Joshua on animation. I think it was helpful for everybody tonight, not just in animation, but I think writers in general. So that's awesome.
It's just a coffee conversation. That's what it was.
Yeah, we're just having coffee. Everyone's just and thank you all for coming. Super appreciate everyone who signed up.
Yes, thank you.
I really appreciate you. Thank you.
Symposium is brought to you by Pipeline Artists, a division of Pipeline Media Group. To learn more about upcoming live symposiums, visit symposium.pipelineartists.com and follow us on Twitter @PipelineArtists.